What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel Building Amazing Things. So in today's video, we're going to be looking at the basics of grid line system. Guys, hold on, I need to pull up this lens. I think I'm looking like a nerd. This is much better. So we're going to be looking at the basics of grid line system. We'll understand what a grid line system is, what are the elements of grid line system, what are the types of grid line system, and we'll also look at the most important type of grid line system, which is the column grid line system. We're going to understand how to create the column grid line system and how to use it in Figma. Then we'll wrap up this video understanding the importance of grid line system. So relax, take a coffee, and make sure you watch this video to the end. And if you have not subscribed to this channel, kindly do so. Subscribe because I'll be making videos every week concerning UI design. So guys, let's get started. So guys, I have my Figma file open here, and if you look at the Figma file, you will notice that I have an artboard added with the name column grid system, and I have some labels called column margin and gutter. So this is a typical grid system, and I'm going to explain what a grid system is. So a grid system is a framework that allows us to arrange UI elements in a way that it creates visual balance. So this UI element can be text, images, or even shapes. So I always stick to using grid system because it helps me to create more consistent and visually appealing UI designs. So back to our Figma file, and in our Figma file, this column, margin, and gutter are the elements of grid system, and I'm simply going to explain each of these. So starting with the column. So the column takes majority of the space in our grid system. It takes, if not 80% of the space in the grid system. So this is where elements are being placed. So we placed our elements on the column, and I'm just simply going to place a rectangle on this column now. If you look at it, the rectangle is snapping to the columns. So this is this is the major function of the column. So we place our elements, our UI elements on the column. Now, if you notice the width of each of these columns, if you notice the width of this column, they are similar to each other. And in a grid system, in a responsive grid system, the columns are percentage based. The essence of making it percentage based is so that it can be responsive to different breakpoints or screen size like mobile or iPad and the rest of that. So let's take a quick look at this artboard. So I'm going to resize this artboard, and you notice that the column widths are also resizing because the widths are declared on percentage base. So column widths are usually declared on percentage base when it comes to responsive grid system. So another thing you will notice about this column grid system is the numbers. So let's count what these column grid systems are. These columns are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we can say this is a 12 column grid system. So the numbers of columns differs depending on the breakpoint or the size of the devices. For mobile devices, you can use 4 column grid system. For web devices, you can use 12 column grid system. And for iPad devices, you can use 8 column grid system. So that is it about the columns. Let's talk about the margin. So the margin is the outermost part from the left to the right of the grid system. And usually we don't place things on the margin, but we can break the rules. Yes, break the rules. So we can break the rules and place things on the margin, but on rare occasions or where you want to be creative. So this width of the margins are fixed based, or they can be percentage based to the size of the artboard or the size of the screen. So if you notice, if I resize this artboard again or the screen again, you'll notice that the width remain consistent because this particular width is fixed, and it is not in percentage to the size of the width of the screen. So another thing we're going to talk about is the gutter. So the gutter is the space between each of the columns. So if you notice this gutter here, you notice there are white spaces between the columns. These are called the gutter. So one of the important use of the gutter is to create space within the element placed on the columns. So if I'm going to snap this rectangle to 3 of this column, and let's create another one and snap it this way as well, you'll notice that from this in these two elements, UI element, there's a space between them, and this space is called the gutter. So the grid system helps with the grid system helps us to have space within the element using the gutter element. So now, having understood this, let's talk about the size of the gutter. So the size of the gutter is fixed space. You can use different sizes, but it depends on the artboard. So a smaller screen size, let's say a mobile device, it's advisable you use a smaller gutter, and a bigger screen size, it's advisable you use a bigger gutter size. So that is it about the elements of a grid system. So the next thing we're going to look at is the type of grid system. So if you look here, this is a column grid system. That is one of the major type of grid system. Another grid system we have is the baseline grid system. So the baseline grid system is usually used for text. And if you want to learn more about the baseline grid system, click on the link above here, or just continue watching this video. Once you're done, you can click on the link to watch more on the baseline grid system. We also have other grid line system, the modular grid system, and the rest of that. But in this course, we're just focusing on the column grid system for this particular video. So I'm going to show you guys now how to create column grid system and how to snap your UI designs or UI element on the column grid system. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to remove this column grids on the column grid on this artboard, and I'm going to move this to the left. So we have our artboard. So I'm going to add the grid system on this artboard. So to do that in Figma, you go to the properties panel here. You can see layout grid. So you click on it. So it creates this grid box for you. So when you click on this grid box here, you could see there are different types here, which is the grid, the column, and the road. So I'm going to select the column because what I want to do is the column grid system. So I'm going to change the number of columns. Like I mentioned, the number of columns can differ. If you're creating a grid system for mobile, it should be 4. If you're creating for iPad, it should be 8. And if you're creating for a web, it should be 12. So 12 is a pretty standard for web designs. This is Bootstrap use 12, Material UI Design use 12. So I'm going to use 12 for this. Now the next thing you're going to do is to set the margin. So margin can range from, remember what I said about margins. Margins are actually fixed when it comes to the sizes. So I'm going to decide to use 70 for this. And the next thing is to set the gutter. So the gutter, I'm going to use 24 pixels for this. So this is how to add column grid to your size, screen size, or your artboard. So this is it. This is the 12 column grid system, and you can change the color of the grid system here. You see that it's on red, and I like using this very color. Let me just pick up the color, and I'm going to change it to that very color, and I'm going to increase the opacity, and boom, I have the column grid system. So now we're going to talk about how to actually align things on the column grid system. So if we look at this design here, this is a design made without using the grid system. So if I'm going to turn up the ruler, so let me go to arrange, view, and I say ruler, and the ruler is out. So if I snap this ruler here, and I try to snap this very one here, on this design, it's not looking bad, but it is not visually appealing. It's not visually balanced, and the arrangements are not consistent. So we're going to use the grid system to actually make this more consistent and more visually appealing. So if you look at the logo here, which is bikes.io, you can see it's not snapping to this ruler, And if you look at the fitness as well, it's not snapping. And as well, the hero image is snapping. And this text here is also snapping. And this very one, it's also not snapping. And if you look at each of these contents here, you will notice that they are not really aligned to each other. So we're going to use the column grid system to help us work in this. So I'm going to delete the rulers I just added, and I'm going to add the grid system just like I showed you earlier. So I'll click on plus on the layout grid on the design panel or the property panel. I select the grid and change it to column, and I'm going to make this 12, and I'm going to change the color to what I want and set the opacity to be 15. Then I'm going to set the gutter to be 24. So if you want to turn off the grid line and see your design, you can click on the eye icon here to turn off the grid line, or you can click on it to show the grid line. You can as well use the Shift G on the keyboard to turn off and turn on the grid line. So I'm going to be doing that a lot, using the Shift G and the Shift G to turn off and show my grid line. So now the grid line is not yet complete. I need to add a margin to the grid line, and I've added a margin of 70 pixels. So with this grid line, I will try to snap the bike to the grid line and make sure it's snapped properly. Perfect. And I'll as well snap this to the grid line as well. And that's good. So I'm trying to snap each of the contents to the left and the right. So let's look at fitness. I'll try to snap it as well. And I'll try to snap that of the fitness bike as well to this. And what next I can do is I can increase this and make it snap also to the end. And what I can do for this is I'm going to take this up a little bit and snap it towards the end here. And what I can do is change this from crop to fit, so it can fit to the design. And I want to change this image as well. I think I have a better image for it. I think this is it. And I'm going to set it to fill. Good, exactly. So now I'm going to snap this as well to maybe take this position. And how many columns? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this as well, I'm going to snap it to take this. So we have a gutter of 24 within them, within the spacing. So I think this is okay. And if you look at this content, remember I said your UI elements will be placed on the columns. So this is not placed on the column. This is a bad design. So what I'm going to do is make it snap to the column, and I have 2 columns for this. And as well for this, I can select each of them, and with that of the button, and use an auto layout, Shift A for it to add an auto layout to it. And I can say let the spacing between the auto layout be 56. And let's snap it back to the grid line. And I'll change the alignment to be center aligned for the auto layout. And boom. That's how to use the grid system. So our design is looking interesting. And let me change this to justify. So I'm going to click here and change the text to justify. And this is it. So it looks much better than the way we actually saw it. And this is exactly how to use the column grid system. So let's talk about the importance of the column grid system. So the column grid system helps us to create more visually appealing designs and visual balanced design. So if you look at the eyes can easily go through these designs now, because if you look at the left and right, they're well aligned, and the sizes are kind of similar to each other because of the column width. And if you look at the size of this particular image and this and the button, they have this kind of similarity if you look at the sizes. So now also, it helps us as UI designers if we are working in a collaborative project, so everybody can understand where to snap things and so another designer cannot come and snap things this way. So most designers will work on this project and make things snap very well. So that is it about column grid system. In the next video, we're going to be talking about the baseline grid system, and I'll show you guys how to use the baseline grid system as well, how to create the baseline grid system, and the importance of grid night the importance of baseline grid system. So guys, thank you for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have not subscribed to this channel, kindly do so, because I'll be putting out more content concerning UI design. And if you find anything challenging, right below in the comment section, tell me what you think that you find challenging, and if you find the video interesting, also let me know in the comment section. I love you guys. See you in the next video where I talk about the baseline grid system. Bye for now.